Jake, yeah, quite an interesting side there. I guess it's also part of your rotation policy to give some of the other guys a start. But in terms of the Challenge Cup, there, how do you rate sort of uh, the goal for the Bulls in this tournament? Is it all out? You want to win it, or is the URC still the sort of the main priority?
Ashfaq, yeah, it is a bit of a mix and match, and it is because some guys are coming back from injury. So a guy like Ruan Nokia has only played 30 minutes. Cameron was injured for a couple of weeks. Simpiwe, obviously, as you know, has been working hard on getting his fitness up because he's been injured for a while. But it is a team that I think is, as I said, is competitive. Bayonnais are a very good side. I think that, one of the things in South Africa we probably don't read up enough about is how good the top 14 is and how the teams are doing in the top 14 in terms of the French league. And Bayonne, I think, are fourth. They haven't lost this year at home. So that team, I mean, it's obviously from our point of view, it's a team that I think will finish strong. And I think that's important because I've got no doubt that one of the things we're going to have to do a little bit against, like we have against all the other big teams, is you're going to have to play well for 80 minutes.
And just secondly, Jake, would you say your biggest challenge is going to be up front against a team like Bayonne? You've got a very competitive pack there who can really get stuck in, and having a guy like Ludwig at forelock.
Yeah, Ashfaq, I mean, you say that. I mean, they're a very good French team. I mean, what I'm saying is they're not number 4 in the log for nothing. They've got a good defense. Set piece is strong. I spoke to Sean Sabi yesterday, and he obviously coaching in Bordeaux, and he lived in Biarritz, or he lives in Biarritz, so he lives right around the corner. And he just said to me they would be ranked as the center combination. I'm not sure who's playing, but the center combination when they're full strength is probably the best center combination in the competition as well. So, as good as their forwards are, as you say, I mean, to have the centers they have, they would be rated as the best center combination in the competition by the French public. So, I think they are a good team all round. I don't think it's just one area where they're strong.
Just one question from me. When you look at that bench, it looks a bit like the bomb squad. A lot of experience on that bench. Obviously, the goal will be to finish strong on Saturday.
Exactly that, Kubus. I mean, but it's also, I've got to stress sometimes it's through circumstance as well. As I said, Ruan hasn't played much rugby. He's hell of important to us. So he'll get a lot more minutes this week, hopefully, than he did last week. Cameron the same. He's been out for a while. Yeah, so if I use those two examples, Goosen will be the same. And Goosen's very important to us. Coming back, I don't think he's going to last 50, 60 minutes. So, we're going to have to manage the game and manage the players as well. It's not just one or the, one or the other. It's a little bit of both. You're going to have to try and manage the game from a game point of view and have to manage the game from a player point of view as well.
First question, what's the thinking behind Renard at 4? I'm just asking, obviously, because we've kind of seen him as a 5 who plays blindside.
Well, the reason for that, Tim, is Jeff has settled himself into calling the lineouts and playing 5. And when Ruan Nokia is on the field, that's probably where one of the other players is going to have to slot in. So whether it's Kobus Wiese or whether it's Johannes Kirsten or whether it's Jeff or whether it's Reinhard Ludwig. I mean, the 5 jersey, when all things are equal, is actually our captain's jersey, which is Ruan Nokia. So, yeah, and I don't think, Sim, I mean, I don't think those days of one's a 4 and one's a 5. Yeah, there are certain players who can play 4 and certain players who can play 5. But some of the best teams in the world, if I look at Retallick in his day with Whitelock, I mean, those two players both played 5, but they could combine in an all-black team as 4 and 5. So, yeah, I think Ludwig, because he can play 7, because he can play 4, because he can play 5, actually it's easy for you to put him into the group all the time as well. So it's not it's not ring fencing anybody. It's just making sure because it could quite happen that in other games he'll move to 5 and call the line out if Kobus Wiese plays with him.
Yeah. And tell me, Jake, just looking at the competition as a whole, or looking a week ahead, which is probably dangerous for you. Do you have a preference? So if you and the Lions win, you suddenly have to come back and play against each other at Loftus. Do you have a preference in terms of, coming back or just staying on in Europe?
Well, look, Tim, I mean, that explains, I mean, the answer is quite self-explanatory, to be honest. I mean, going back and coming back to Munster would not be ideal. But as I said to you before we left, I mean, that it is one of those things about this season, and I'm talking about Bulls, in terms of Bulls, we've just had a very, very different season in terms of travel, tours, extended tours linked to the side of Bok tours. It would be something that we'd have to accept, and it'd be something that we'd have to adapt to, which we've done really well this year. But if the Lions win and we win, and we have to go back to Loftus and then come back again to Munster, as I said, there's no win-win, because the coming home, I suppose, in one way is not as bad, because Lions are also on tour. So, had Lions played at home this week and we'd have to fly back, then I suppose it becomes a little bit of a disadvantage. But it's not something that I think we'll know by tonight, because Edinburgh play the Lions tonight. So we'll know by the time we go to bed tonight whether or not it's a possibility for us to have to come home.
Jake, you've mentioned that the Bayonnais centres are considered the best in France. Can we take it then that Harold Forster and David Kriel are therefore your first choice centres?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing about them, they're the most seasoned, Ken. I mean, Harold's played Super Rugby finals. He's older. He's obviously he's a little bit more battle weary, battle hardened. And he's done really well when we've played in big games. He's played really well in big games as well. So, but saying that, I mean, we know that with the way rugby goes, Ken, the chances of having that combination week in and week out, and chances of being able to play them 80 every single week as well is highly unlikely. So while we do have them both available, and while they're fresh, and while they can still be available to play in big games, I think it's important that we keep that combination together.
So you did mention earlier that you did talk a bit about Bayonne, but having coached in France before, is there more you'd like to share about the team that maybe South African fans don't know about Bayonne? I know they're fourth in the log. They must be quite strong.
Yeah, Nicholas, I mean, what I will share with you, which is what I shared with the players as well, is that playing away in France is tough. For some unknown reason, I mean, it's just historically how it is. The players play at home, they find another gear, they home crowds and home wins are massive for them, and for any team, whether it's a Pro D2 team, whether it's a top 14 team, they put a premium on winning at home. And they, as I said, Bayonne haven't lost at home this year, and they've played some big games. And so it's going to be a tough game. I mean, I'm under no illusions of the fact that when you play in France and you play away, it's a wonderful experience. They sing the song before, a well-known song that they sing. The atmosphere is incredible. It'll be sold out. It's really a wonderful experience for these young players that are coming here for the first time. And as I said, hopefully we'll do it justice by playing as well as we can.
Thanks. And this is, I believe, your first ever Challenge Cup match and the first ever Challenge Cup campaign. What do you mind telling us a bit about what this means as a learning opportunity, and at the same time a chance to stake your claim on the tournament?
Yeah, so Nicholas, not my first. I mean, when I was at Montpellier, we won the Challenge Cup. But a lot of for these young players, it's obviously their first chance of playing. But they've been part of Champions Cup in the beginning part of the year. They played Champions Cup last year. And I think when you get to the playoffs of Challenge Cup, then it's the top teams that are playing there anyway. And I think it's like for like. I mean, obviously taking nothing away from the Toulouse and the Leinsters and the big clubs. It is as important for these clubs that are playing in the Challenge Cup. It's as important for their supporters, important for their club, and it's important for their history. And so it might seem to the outsider that it's a Challenge Cup game, but I can tell you that it is as important to these clubs playing in the Challenge Cup. For some of these clubs, it's the way to get back into the Champions League. You know, obviously a side like Bayonne that are fourth, maybe they won't need to win the Challenge Cup in order to get up, but it has in the past been massive for clubs that have been at the bottom end of their league as a way to get into the Champions League for next year, because whether you like it or not, that is the pinnacle of club rugby, the Champions League, and a lot of these clubs know that financially it's a massive boost for them as well if they can get into the Champions League. So if you're not in the top 8 in your competition and you can win the Challenge Cup, I'm not sure if it's like that anymore, but it used to be a ticket into the Champions Cup, and that is massive for the clubs that have struggled in their domestic competitions.
Jake, we've been wondering about South African teams or South African supporters not getting excited about this competition, and it's the best competition in the world. You just mentioned that, you know, you play against the best teams in the world. And even so, do you honestly think that South African teams belong in this competition, or are we ever going to be interested in it? Or do you think it's just maybe a bit too soon for us, you know, with our limitations in terms of squad size and budgets and the likes, to get too soon to get excited? And once we start really winning against the bigger teams, things will pick up a bit.
Well, so let's say this, MV, what you've said there is exactly the answer and the question all in one. You know, will they get excited? I'm sure they will. It'll take time because it was a bit like Super Rugby. Let's be fair. In the beginning of Super Rugby, I mean, we weren't convinced that Super Rugby was for us. And then when it went to 12, 14, 16 and pool systems and conferences, then we also weren't convinced it was for us. And then when the Bulls started to win it, you know, then the whole narrative in South Africa changed and people started to think that Super Rugby was fantastic. It'll take time. It'll take time. But, you know, you've heard me say this many, many times. If you put your name down for a competition, you should have the ability to actually win it. And as long as we don't have 30, 40 international players in our squads, like the Leinsters, like the Toulouse, like the La Rochelles, like the Saracens of old, like the Toulons of old, it's going to be an uphill battle. So the answer is very simple. When we do decide it's important, when we do decide that it is something that we would like to win as a country, and we make the decisions in and around those calls, then it will become a lot bigger and a lot more exciting for the supporters. I mean, but saying that, take nothing away from the fact, MV, it's still big for the other clubs in that are playing in it. Maybe we haven't gotten onto it yet, and I take that as a learning experience from what we got out of Super Rugby. But it is a massive club. It is the biggest club competition, rugby club competition in the world. I mean, it's when the final is played and they're 46 internationals playing against each other. Then you can imagine it's like basically it's international rugby played in provincial jerseys, in club jerseys. So I would hope going forward that, you know, maybe as we get closer and closer to becoming partners of the URC, becoming partners of EPCR, that we would then put a premium on trying to win this competition, which would help coaches like us, coaches like me, and by getting the better players and the best players in the world to come and play for the Bulls. I read an article this week where Robbie Fleck and Skalkberger were talking about maybe copying, as in Stormers, copying the Leinster model. You know, how wonderful it'll be to have Geordie Barrett playing for us, and how good it'll be to have, you know, Aaron Smith playing for us, and I'm using names. Damien McKenzie or whatever the story is. If we felt that was going to be an added value to our competition, maybe that's what we need, MV, to get the interest of the supporters in South Africa behind these big club games.
Last week I asked you about, you know, are you going to keep your players fresh, and are you going to go for this competition or not really? And I think you've answered it by, you called it a mix and match. This is a very well-balanced team that will allow you to actually play well enough and maybe win the game. And so people can't be accusing you of not fielding your best team, at the same time keeping some of the legs fresh and then giving a guy like Johan Goosen a chance to sort of ease back into it.
Yeah, MV, and I told you last week and the week before and the week before and the week before, we'll never be able to put our best team on because 2/3 of them are playing overseas. And that's never going to change, you know. But in terms of this competition, it's a well-balanced team. Guys coming back from injury, I've got to manage them. Guys who are going to be important for us at the back end of the competition, of the URC as well, not taking any away from the back end of this competition. are going to be important for us. So it's a case of I can't chuck all my eggs in one basket. I can't go hammer and tongs, into one game. I've got to find the balance. But I would believe that this team, I think you've all seen that. If you look at the bench and how they come on and who they come on for and how we can change the group around at the back end of the competition, I'm talking about of the game this weekend. It's not a bad 15 that'll be on the field when we finish off.
Just lastly from me, Jack, or just one from me. You spoke about the impact, the bench, and managing your players, but Johan Goosen stands out as a player with a wealth of experience in France, but coming back from that injury. How key is he to this? Was it to this game, and looking forward, and also managing him? Was, as you said, as an injured player, but that experience is invaluable.
Well, I'm so glad again, Devin, that you've said that, because I remember when he was playing, people weren't convinced he was the right guy, and there was a lot of articles about Goosen and number 10 jersey and all that sort of stuff at the Bulls. We've seen now, since he hasn't been with us, how our game shape has changed, and how important he actually is to us, and how important goal kicking is to us, and how important him getting the backs to attack the way that we've attacked the last 3-4 years is important to us. So, but I mean, I can't put all the pressure on his shoulders, and I can't expect him, after a long injury and being out with a knee injury for as long as he has, to come in and wave a wand and in 30 minutes or 40 minutes or whatever time he gets to be the best he can be. It's going to take time, but I've said it to you many times. I rate him very highly. He has played here. Everyone here knows who he is. They all want to have his signature, and they all want to photograph with him. And he's a big name in France because of what he did. He was player of the top 14 when he was at Racing Metro. So he is important to us. But as I said, like Ruan Nokia last week, I wanted to play him, but you can't play him for 80 minutes. Like all the other injured players that are coming back, it's about getting the balance right. And all we got to do is hopefully stay alive in every competition. And when we get to, and again, this is a knockout game, but when we get to the back end of every competition, have our best players available and fit to play. That's what I think every team needs to do. Is if you get all your best players available for the biggest game of the year and the one that counts the most, chances are that any team then has a chance to win that fixture.